which I feel like I'm a quarantine is sort of my natural state.
Right.
Actually, I discovered.
Yeah. I remember you practicing like 10 hours a day in your room and your mom having to force you to have lunch because you just be in your little vortex of Herbie Hancock or whatever it was, Medeski Martin and Wood.
Yeah, that was quite a phase.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I remember all the Duncan phases. I remember all
Uh,
the Liz Carroll phase. You went off to Switzerland and you just studied Liz Carroll like 8 hours a day or something.
yeah, there wasn't much else to do for me in Switzerland.
So, you know what's funny? For those of you that are watching, I don't know if it's funny, it's just true. Duncan and I have known each other for, I don't know, Duncan, 24 years or something? A long time.
Long time. Yeah.
Maybe, yeah, something like that. Um, the years run together. And normally when I do these interviews, I ask people a little bit about their background, you know, uh, their influences, how they started playing, all this. But I feel like with you, I already know the answers to all those questions. I know not everyone does. So maybe we should just, for everyone else's benefit, we should just start with the very beginning, maybe how you got into the fiddle. And we won't make this too biographical. I want it to be more about your creative process and how you think about music, but just give folks just a little bit of context as to how you got started on the fiddle.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I guess my real backbone would be Irish music and classical music. Those were like simultaneously my beginnings. I started with Suzuki when I was 4, and I think I got into playing Irish music a few years after that. And uh, two of my mother's sisters, one of them is who, of course, both of them, especially Beanie. Beanie O'Dell she's an Irish fiddle player living in Ennis, Ireland, in now she's living in Ireland. And my other aunt, Monique Pinelli, who, of course, is Julian Pinelli's mother, my cousin who's a great fiddle player. She still lives in Asheville and teaches. She's a Suzuki teacher, or don't know officially. She's teaches young children violin, classical violin, and so that's kind of what I was exposed to early on, and tremendous influence, to use a little bit of Trump vocabulary. Tremendous influence.
Ooh.
So soon, bringing it in so soon.
Yeah, a little too soon.
Anyway, yeah. So I think that's kind of and then from there, of course, I got into a lot of things, and of course, I feel like you were such a big part of the journey from that stemmed from that beginning. Of course, getting into jazz. My first venture into jazz was, of course, through Stefan Grappelli and Django Reinhardt, which you introduced me to.
That's right, the tape, that little tape.
The infamous tape.
I never got back. Well, I got it back.
You did? Okay, good. So, yeah, it's funny, and yeah, I feel like you were sort of there, as you said. You were observing and participating in a lot, and also in tandem with me in a lot of these phases and growing. Of course, like I feel like to speak for both of us, I feel like Mark O'Connor and his sort of his I don't know, I want to say like his universe, the Mark O'Connor universe was a big part of that, and of course like Daryl and Casey, and we were like very much we were that generation.
Yeah, totally.
Crooked Still, Rashad.
Yeah. Hot Swing, remember that album? Mark O'Connor.
Yeah, I'd love to go and listen to that record again, because I had learned a lot of that record.
Yeah.
Back.
I think we played some of those solos at one point.
Yeah.
I mean, everything you're saying, I could say the same for you, Duncan. Like, you introduced me to so many crucial artists and records that were like monumental in my you know, in my musical development. This isn't about me, but it's just funny, like how many parallels there are, and like for people that don't know us, it probably seems pretty strange to encounter someone who started in Irish and then also plays jazz and old time, and you know, and all these like, I don't know. I feel like there was a period there where we were pretty much listening to the same stuff. I think you probably got more into the funk thing than I did, but yeah, when I was like a tween, if not a preteen, you know, I remember a lot of what I listened to is stuff that you told me to listen to. Herbie Hancock, you know, Headhunters and Medeski, Martin and Wood, and you know, there's other stuff too. But anyway, not to steal the thunder. So Irish music, and then jazz. So jazz, that would have been, I guess you would have been like 10, 11 years old or something.
I feel like I got into jazz a little later than that. I'm not sure though. I mean, when would you say that was, that the Stefan Grappelli episode?
Well, I got that, yeah. So I got that tape when I was 14.
Okay, and I think you're maybe a little older than me. Like, yeah, we're basically the same age.
I think I'm 87.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah. So what I remember is that at some point you just got really into the old time bluegrass thing, and it like almost came out of nowhere. Because I think for everyone that knew you growing up in Asheville, you were Duncan, the Irish fiddle player, and then later jazz, and you even went to school for jazz. But tell us a little bit about the bluegrass old time part of you, because I feel like a lot of people nowadays probably associate you more with that than Irish music because of Rising Appalachia, because of, you know, you're like so on the scene, you know, the bluegrass sessions at Mona's, and play with so many, you know, Molly Tuttle, so many people like that. So when did that happen?
I mean, it very much happened through jazz and acoustic jazz, and because that scene at the time, you know, it was very intertwined. Like, I feel like it was mostly the key figures were bluegrassers like Daryl and Casey and whoever, who were either into jazz or played jazz also, but were maybe bluegrass players first. And so, you know, and of course we grew up in Asheville, and you just hear bluegrass everywhere. You turn on the radio, you hear bluegrass. You know, you might just like go into Marshall to go to the market or something. There's bluegrass happening.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's funny. It never really gripped me early on. And it's interesting because my brother and my cousin, who are great fiddle players, they're no bluegrass. It's really interesting. It has been interesting for me to see them develop kind of in the same, like more or less the same, in the same environment. Yeah.
That echo just came out of nowhere. I don't know why.
Check. I can still hear a little bit.
Yeah. Let's try and plow through it.
All right. Plowing through. Yeah, it's been interesting to see Julian and Grayson in the same, in the same town, in the same community that I grew up in, but sort of like you more closely utilizing those.
Same family.
Yeah, same family. And sort of like they really took advantage of the bluegrass being around them, which I did not, I feel like. Maybe I'm digressing a little bit though. I mean, I feel like I got into it because just from the peripheral, it being there in the things I was interested in. It's really not something that like grabbed me as something I wanted to do. And I would say too that I'd never got bit by the bug. I would admit to that today. I love playing bluegrass. I love so many things about it. I love the community, but I feel like other people who have maybe grown up on the same path as me or similar, there's a lot of people you could say like at some point or another they were around it and maybe didn't start with it, but they were around it and they just like got bit by the bug. They got into something through, like there was a window into bluegrass and they really got into it. I mean, that happens with any genre, but you know, like Bronwyn, for example, you know, really got bit by it, and
Totally.
now like plays bluegrass exclusively. It seems like I've heard her claim that. I don't know what she would say, but
Yeah. She jokes that she can't even go to an Irish session. We had her on here,
yeah,
and I'm like sort of misquoting her, but it was something to that effect. She is just straight on bluegrass. But I mean, look how great she sounds. There's something to be said for just going like an inch wide and a mile deep.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah.
So well,
12 deep.
mile 12 deep. So you I want to just shift gears here a little bit and talk about your own original music, because you have all these influences, and I suppose one of the ideas behind this whole interview series was to interview great musicians who are great improvisers, great composers, which are two sides of the same coin to me, and just talk to them a little bit about their process, how they think about music. And I think this is interesting to talk to you about, because you have always written music, whether it's Irish tunes, jazz, you know, American style fiddle tunes. How do you see yourself as a composer? Do you feel like when you write, you're synthesizing everything you do into this one Duncan voice, or do you try and write like, okay, I'm going to write a bluegrass tune, I'm going to write an Irish tune? Do you kind of categorize your composing by style?
That's an interesting question. I feel like I don't. I mean, I have to say it's been a long time since I've written like an acoustic thing of any kind. I mean, right now it's like for the past, I would say 6 years or something, I've just been like really enveloped in like songwriting and like kind of not necessarily like hearing fiddle or cello in my head, although that's like, you know, that's kind of what I do best. So it always finds its way in there somehow. But I'm not, I feel like that's another thing I don't really have in common with a lot of people in the scene. It's like, and I kind of wish I did sometimes. I feel like I'm pretty overdue to like make do a project of like something kind of like maybe Irish or old time and like, or like something in the sort of like Daryl mashup vein, I guess you could say, although of course it wouldn't be, you know, totally that, but I guess I always envisioned that like if I do go another, you know, if I do live another however long I live, I would eventually somehow like come full circle and like do a project, like it, you know, get really deep into something that more like embraces that background a little bit more. Although I feel like I'm very much not in that phase right now.
Yeah. What phase are you in?
I'm like, well, my pandemic phase is like a couple different things. It's really studying classical composition from the Nadia Boulanger school. Who she's a famous teacher who taught like all kinds of famous composers like Aaron Copland, and Quincy Jones was one of her students. And so there's this whole like methodology and lineage of that, and I'm studying with this guy who is a master in that field, and that's been a really kind of unexpected turn, and like coincided perfectly with the pandemic happening, with me not being on tour and being able to really soak that in. So that's the one side of it, and then the other thing I'm doing is just like basically writing indie pop music and producing that, playing everything, writing, singing, playing, mixing everything, producing it all myself.
These are other people's projects, though.
No, it's all my music.
Oh, this is all yours. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So I've and yeah, so I've just started like putting some things out on Instagram as they come, like not necessarily making a record or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's something I always imagined doing, but again, never would have happened if I didn't have all this time to do it.
Yeah.
Now that I have the time, it's really I've become very very dedicated to it and really put a lot of energy into it. So.
Speaking of dedication, you told me a few weeks ago you'd been waking up at 4 a.m. or something to start composing. Is that right?
Yeah, I when the weather was nice. I wish I could still do it, but I can't get out of bed when I have terrible circulation. But I love getting up early.
Wow. So you'll work through, I guess, till breakfast or something? Is that like your window, or do you just compose all day long?
Um, yeah, I worked for a few hours. Like at the time I was getting up at 4 or 5 and working till about 9, and like at that point either going usually. I mean, then I would take a nap during the day.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Smart.
that's a super ideal flow for me.
Yeah.
When I can get there. Man, yeah, having the flexibility to decide your own schedule, it's like so novel for me. I've never had that in my life.
Tell me about it. Yeah, I think both of
A
us.
lot of people haven't.
Well, for us touring musicians, I know both of us hit the road pretty hard when there aren't pandemics around. So I'm kind of in the same boat, although I had a kid 3 weeks ago, so that's kind of rocked my schedule.
Wow. Yeah, I can't possibly imagine.
A lot of things have happened in pandemic. Duncan, your video on Instagram, it's not really visible. All this, or no, is that mine?
That looks like yours.
Jeez, looking at me, looking at you. Sorry. Thistle Bell on Instagram says, "Early morning is where it's at." I wish I had you guys' discipline. It's inspiring. So Duncan, you were talking about making this
coffee.
Is that the secret?
That's the secret.
And I don't drink coffee, as you know. So
that's right.
That's my problem. You were talking about making indie pop music, and I just want to comment on a trend I'm seeing more and more. I'd love for you. Your brother just joined. Hey, Grayson. I'd love for you to comment a little bit about just a trend, if you perceive it as a trend. I've kind of been perceiving this trend of folk musicians, if not migrating, at least dipping their toes into this more commercial music world. And there are many examples of this, and they're all different, but I mean, there's bands now like the Punch Brothers who are very cerebral in the way they do it. They kind of appeal to both camps. Or maybe even Wolfpack you could categorize as a band that appeals to both musophiles, composers, and people just who like a great groove. I think the Punch Brothers is probably a better example of the extreme end of the spectrum of just like very complex, very cerebral, but with a pop sensibility. But they're all bluegrass musicians at heart. So, and I know Molly Tuttle's new album is a little bit more in that direction. I noticed this trend. Do you think that this is something that's going to continue? Is this the evolution of? This is a big question. Is this the evolution of American folk music? Is this a product of COVID? Is this in response to the crumbling music industry? Your comments on all this?
I don't know. I really can't say. I really can't say. I mean, that's an interesting point. I do wonder, because it does seem like, the last few generations maybe like didn't foray into like maybe using like different instruments than what they like. I feel like all the mandolin players like Grisman and, well, actually, I mean, I don't know. What would you say that's correct to say that it's a generation? I don't know. I mean, you know, as I'm saying mandolin players, I'm thinking about Sam Bush, you know, like starting a basically a jam grass thing.
Yeah,
That's,
the new
that
grass
has
revival.
drums. I mean, like adding drums to the thing, that's always kind of been like the big controversy, right? When like
Right.
Solus or like, you know, like maybe now a band like Della May has drums, like, what's the other one?
Deep Canyon Rangers.
Steep Canyon Rangers has a drummer now. It's like, as soon as they turn that corner, then everyone's like, usually like they're up in arms about it or whatever. I don't know. I can't really answer to any of that, although that I'd be fascinated to contemplate that more. I just feel like there are certain things that you, I feel like certain instruments just do certain things, you know, and we all are, everything is so globalized, like in our, what we hear and see now, you know, and I think as composers, it's like you can't always control what comes into your mind and what
That's
you
good.
are, you're basically only limited by like what you can do and like who you can afford or influence to play with you.
Totally.
And so just depends on what the recipe of what of those things ends up becoming, that dictates what your thing sounds like. I mean, for me, like I consider myself a multi-instrumentalist, I guess, and I've really just been like driven by this. I don't know. I'm never really, I don't know if, yeah, I'm not satisfied. I'm always like, what could, you know, when I hear a sound in my head that I'm not, that seems new to me, you know, is maybe like really like keyboard driven, for example. It's like, I have to learn how to do that because it's the only way to do it well, at least to my standard, like to my taste of like, you know, how deep can I get into the tradition of like how this works, like the technique and the like maybe like the picking pattern on the guitar or like the like arpeggiation pattern on the piano or keyboard or whatever. Like how much can I, how quickly can I get it, how well and how practical can I be about getting into that, given that, you know, I'm not starting from the beginning of my life and my career.
I want to make a comment. I'd love to hear your comment on my comment. So from listening to you, it sounds like you hear more in terms of just sound than genre. It's like, that's a sound that I want in my composition or in my arrangement, that arpeggio, that instrument, whatever it is. You're a musician who has very much studied specific genres. And I think there are musicians who, obviously, when you study music, now I'm hearing myself.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what to do. I've got you turned down.
When you study music, I mean, you have to go through some genre to learn the basics, but I feel like there are a lot of people, even before the whole YouTube generation, when you had every single genre at your disposal, just one click away, you know, people would go to their guitar teacher and they would just learn whatever song they heard on the radio that sounded good. And it could be a country song, it could be a rock song, as opposed to, you know, we were talking about Bronwyn going an inch wide and a mile deep and just channeling one genre, learning it inside and out. So it's interesting because you're someone that I've always thought of that has gone an inch wide and a mile deep, but with many different genres. But it seems like now you have this very cohesive way of thinking about music and putting them all together. That was my comment. It's more of a comment than a question. But would you agree with that, or?
I mean, yeah, you can only go so deep and so narrow with so much time and so much life.
Right.
So I think that's a dilemma that I definitely have like a pretty big identity struggle with that. But, you know, as I'm getting older and like feeling like everything's a little bit less significant and like, you know, I've achieved what I have and I haven't achieved what I haven't. And it's like, I don't know. I feel like, I don't know, maybe it's a Capricorn thing. I'm a double Capricorn, apparently.
Double the trouble.
Sun sign and like all the houses or whatever. It's like, my mother's obsessed with this stuff. So it's kind of bitten into my image of myself, even though I know very little about it. But basically, it's like I'm supposed to be someone, according to that idea. It's like who like figures it all out later, maybe. Like,
Okay.
you know,
Yeah, yeah.
instead of like being in your prime and being like, oh, I've got. I mean, this is at least what I'm clinging to as a hope. You know what I mean? Because like,
Your brother's cracking up here listening to this
oh yeah.
on Instagram.
So anyway, that's like the hope I have to cling to, is that maybe I'll have it all figured out. Um, you know, maybe a little bit past like the prime age in human years,
Mhm.
but that's apparently like when a Capricorn has it all worked out. So
Gotcha.
you know,
Well, I actually I did have a question with my comment, which I'll just mention, and then I'll open up the floor to everyone else's questions. A lot of people are watching here, so I feel like we're going to get a lot of piss takes. But
nice.
anyway,
Easy on the piss takes.
so my question was going to be someone who plays so many different instruments, so many different genres, uh, and even though we talked about how you have this kind of like synthesized, cohesive approach to music, thinking about music, is there a genre that you feel like is your musical vernacular that you come back to, that is kind of the lens in which you play, the accent, so to speak?
Yeah. I think it's two styles, and that's Irish music and classical music.
Okay, cool, interesting.
Yeah. I mean, as much as I wish that I could just like play jazz in my sleep, like some people can, it'll never be so, I think.
I'm not surprised by the Irish. I am by the classical. I was expecting something
Huh.
else. I don't know what I was expecting.
Yeah. Yeah. I think those are the things.
I guess I'm only surprised by that because people say classical, they think violinist.
Yeah.
Duncan Wickel to me is such a fiddler.
Yeah.
That's why I'm
Well, it's
surprised.
certainly not classical. Like my aesthetic or whatever can certainly not it like, and like this, like, yeah, I have nothing in terms of like the social and image and like the scene of classical music. I'm definitely like pretty much as far from that as you can go, but in terms of like the sound, like the harmonic and the um that's
Yeah,
really what I come from, I feel like.
cool. Well, feel free to ask questions, anyone that's tuned in here on Facebook. I'm actually going to check Facebook real quick, see if there's any questions. But while I'm doing that, Duncan, are there any recording projects we can look forward to, or anything on the horizon for late 2020, early 2021?
Oh, that's a good question. I should have had that in my queue of things to say, as you would expect. But I don't know. All I can say is I'm mixing a new song that I'm might just release on Instagram at a moment's notice or at no notice. So keep an eye out for that. Generally, keep an eye out for that. That's kind of my MO these days. We do have a Rising Appalachia live stream happen. I don't know if it's publicly been announced, but what the hell? I think it's on December 15th or something like that. And that's
Okay,
part of our Patreon venture.
cool.
Although I think it'll be probably publicly available. Yeah, other than that, I don't know. Yeah, to be seen, to be determined.
Well, keep tabs, everyone, on Duncan Wickel. How can people do that? Should they follow you here on Instagram or Facebook?
Yeah, I'm not a Facebook person. Instagram would be the place.
Okay.
And I have a website too. It's wickelbuckle.com. And also, I think duncanwickel.com. I think they direct to the same place.
Ooh, Lily Henley writes solo record.
Solo record. Well, I don't. Lily might not have been logged on when I was saying before. I'm not. I'm sort of just releasing things as they come. Usually, like song by song. I would like to sort of like compile it all into a record. So I'm working on that right now. And now that another thing I'm doing with my time is like trying to catch up on the legalities of and the business of releasing and distributing music online, which I'm way behind on that spectrum. So
it's hard to not be behind because it changes on a daily basis, I feel.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
fair play to you. John Duncan writes, your tune Jeddah Smeedy is so good.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, actually, that tune I realized the other day is a ripoff of a version of what tune is that? It's a version, the minor version of "Sail Away Ladies," I think, which I know it because Heath recorded it on his record Volume 2. So there you go. It's out of the bag. That's totally a plagiarized tune, more or less. It does have like a few signature.
It's a great plagiarization, then.
Thank you.
We have a question from Thistlebell. Have you ever, or would you ever, dabble in Icelandic Norse fiddle music?
I have not. I mean, I think they're close. I don't even know if I know what that sounds like. Norse fiddle music. I mean,
She put Icelandic / Norse fiddle music, so maybe they're two separate.
Okay. I mean, I've heard a lot of Finnish music and a lot of Scandinavian music, as I'm sure you have. I do. I love that music a lot. I've never. That's another thing that I didn't get bit by the bug, but I do love that music. Yeah.
I think Lily is confirming Norse is synonymous with Norwegian.
Uh-huh.
So,
oh,
I know you've played a Norwegian tune or two.
Oh yeah, I think there's like one that I sort of like have bastardized.
What bugs have you been bitten by?
Jazz.
Yeah.
Jazz and like funk and classic rock and roll.
Classic rock and roll.
Blues.
Nice.
What? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Stevie Wonder.
Who has?
I'm sort of just listing phases that I've gone through.
Yeah.
You know.
Totally. I mean, those are, yeah. I've been bitten by all those too, I think. I was specifically in a country blues phase.
Like who was that?
Mississippi John Hurt, Blind Lemon Jefferson, Blind Willie McTell, Lead Belly. Just basically all those field recordings from the 20s and 30s. Like virtuosic guitar playing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just G, C, and D for the most part, but it's like unbelievable what they're doing with the right hand. I mean, it's not just G, C, and D, but it's impressive. That was like senior year of high school for me.
Yeah, that stuff is all amazing. Lead Belly is so amazing. I love that music.
Yeah. Cool. Well, let's see. Not a lot of questions are coming in. I'm guessing that there's a lot of people here who know you, who or maybe they feel like they know you through your posts, and their questions have been answered. But there's no pressure, of course. More than anything, this is just a conversation, just to hear your thoughts on some of these ideas of creativity and improvisation and music itself. You know, I think now more than ever, people are looking for inspiration, and you know, I think we found a little bit of inspiration last week with the election results, a little bit, but you know, we still have a pandemic, worst it's ever been, and there's still not a lot of gigs. There might be even less in the coming months. So I think music is a great source of inspiration for people, and so that's one of the reasons that I wanted to do this, was to talk to people like you, Duncan, who give a lot of inspiration to people, and I know you do because I've heard it from people. Heard it from people here in Asheville who you don't even know, but they know you. You know, so anyway, yeah, I want to thank you for your time. If there's no
thank you.
Of course.
I wish the inspiration thing. Yeah. Thank you. It's been wonderful to catch up and and think about this stuff. Yeah, I think I agree. I think we all need it, and uh,
Mhm.
yeah, everyone's so different, and there's so many. You never know what's going to open the window into like your coping, your healthy coping strategy. You know, I mean,
Mhm.
for musicians, there's so many different ones, and you know, hopefully, if you haven't found something, if you're someone out there who hasn't figured out how to be productive musically or creatively through this time,
Mhm.
it's got to keep looking because it'll come up in an unexpected way. It might not be, you know, if you can't perform, maybe recording is something that suits you. You know, you want to like learn
Yeah.
how to digital audio workstation and you know, I mean that like then you can express everything, and it's a different medium than performance. And I know a lot of people miss that. I'm not somebody who misses that right now as much.
Mhm.
But yeah, everyone's different, and like music is such a wide umbrella of art forms, really, and ways to express yourself. There's a performance edge of it.
Totally.
There's the sound palette, creative, um, you know, and then there's so, and then by extension, there's so many. There's performance art and fashion, and you know, there's that whole thing. There's just
Yeah.
yeah, you know, now's the time to like back up into something you were interested in that you didn't have a chance uh, to really collect your skill in that area, or looking forward into something totally new, you know, depending on your age and your phase of life.
What you're saying reminds me of a quote by Elizabeth Gilbert, who's an author. I actually haven't read any of her books, but I've heard some of her interviews.
Is she
And
one of did she write that magic or what's
yeah,
this big
Big Magic.
magic? Yeah.
For Big Magic, she wrote "Eat, Pray, Love,"
Oh yes, yeah, of course. Yeah,
which is like my mom's
that's
all-time
a big
favorite
one.
film. Um, and she has a quote which is, "Follow your curiosity, as opposed to follow your passion.
I
Follow
like
your
that.
curiosity because your passion might not, it's when people say follow your passion and say you're like, you're broke and you're struggling to make ends meet, and maybe your passion is to study with the greatest chess composer in Russia or something, but sometimes your passion isn't always realistic given what's going on in your life.
Yeah.
So she says, follow your curiosity because that's something that you can do no matter what stage of your life. And your curiosity can be something as simple as, why does that bird always follow that other bird? An everyday thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And just follow it and mine it and dig deeper, and it'll lead you to something else. And I think now is a great time for everyone to do that.
Yeah, that's great. And I'll add to that too. When you said that quote, what it made me think about is like um, how there is like this big emphasis on passion in the creative arts,
Hmm.
and I think that can be intimidating for people who feel like they're maybe not maybe like, you know, if you're feeling if you're going through like a writer's block or something like that, and you feel like the passion's not there. And
Totally.
I like that follow your curiosity, because really like there's another writer quote, and I can't remember who it is, but it's like if you want to express yourself, go out into the yard and ring a bell.
Yeah.
You know, because it's not. I mean, you are expressing something, and expression does like have a say in like what you do,
Hmm.
and but it doesn't always happen in that order. Like you don't always set out to have a thing that you express. Usually, I mean, for me, I feel like the expression comes out in the process of the craft,
Hmm.
and that's because I've followed curiosity, really.
Yeah.
And the expression, it just happens because you're human. It doesn't you know, it doesn't make like, because art is like, expression doesn't make art great by alone, you
Right.
know? So
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, that's a great quote to end on, I think. So I want to thank you again for your time, Duncan. I'm going to be posting this to YouTube afterwards. Some of you are probably already watching this on YouTube right now, but and if you made it this far, hats off to you. Thank you. But the next one of these is going to be in 2 weeks. I believe that's Black Friday. So November 27th with snarky puppy violinist Zach Brock. So definitely tune into that. Zach is a Grammy-winning violin player, just one of the best jazz players. He's one of those people Duncan's talking about that can just play jazz in his sleep, for sure. Um, but yeah, tune into that, and there will be a lot more of these coming. Thank you all for tuning in.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Finn. Thanks for doing what you're doing.
Of course, man.
It's wonderful, and we need it. So thank you.
Cheers, man. Thanks.
Thanks,
All right.
everyone.
Stopping the recording.